The story begins in a land of sand and silence. Arabia, before Islam, was a world divided, tribes locked in endless rivalry, merchants tracing the roots of incense and silk, poets singing of war and honor beneath the stars. There was no empire here, no grand vision, only survival and the restless wind of the desert. But from this barren soil, something extraordinary was about to rise. A man named Muhammad began to speak, not of tribal glory, but of a single God, of justice, compassion, and unity. His message spread among the poor, the wanderers, and the seekers of truth. For many, it was a spiritual awakening. For others, a challenge to the old order. Within 2 decades, this message transformed a scattered people into a community bound by faith, the nation. But when Muhammad died in 632 CE, a question emerged like a storm on the horizon. Could this fragile unity survive without him? The leaders who followed, known as the caliphs, or successors, faced a land still fractured by loyalties and ambition. To preserve the new faith, they fought the so-called wars of apostasy, uniting Arabia once more under one banner. Yet as unity returned, another force began to stir: expansion. The deserts could no longer contain the energy of this new civilization. To the north lay 2 mighty empires, the Byzantines and the Sassanids, ancient rivals weakened by decades of war. What began as defensive raids soon became something far greater. Armies of men, carrying both the sword and the word of God, crossed the borders of Arabia into Syria, Iraq, and Persia. Historians still debate what drove them. Some say it was faith, the desire to spread Islam's message across the earth. Others say it was necessity, the need for resources, unity, and survival. But perhaps it was both. For in the 7th century, religion and politics were not 2 worlds. They were one, inseparable, intertwined, each giving the other its strength. Under Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, the conquests accelerated with astonishing speed. The mighty Persian Empire fell. The Byzantines lost Syria and Egypt. Yet, unlike many conquerors, the Arabs did not destroy the cultures they met. They taxed, they negotiated, and often they let people keep their faiths. There is no compulsion in religion, the Quran said, and while history is never that pure, conversion came slowly, often by choice over generations. What is remarkable is not just how far the armies went, but how quickly an empire emerged. Within a century, Arabic became the language of law, science, and poetry. Cities like Damascus, Basra, and Kufa turned into centers of art and learning. The conquests had brought not only power, but a fusion of civilizations, Greek, Persian, Indian, woven together under an Islamic framework. Yet with power came politics. The simple faith of the desert was now ruling vast, diverse lands. The Umayyad caliphs built palaces, collected taxes, and organized bureaucracies. Their empire stretched from Spain to the Indus River, a realm larger than Rome at its height. Religion remained the soul of the empire, but politics became its machinery. The early Muslims did not separate the two. When they fought, they believed they were fulfilling divine purpose. When they governed, they believed they were serving God through order and justice. But as generations passed, ambitions shifted. The banner of faith sometimes became a banner of rule. And yet, beneath the politics, the idea of a divine mission never fully disappeared. Even as empires rose and fell, the Abbasids after the Umayyads, the Ottomans. Centuries later, the story of those first conquests remained a symbol of destiny, courage, and belief. So were the Islamic conquests wars of religion, or political expansion disguised in holy words? The answer is not simple. They were both. They were neither. They were something more profound. The birth of a civilization that saw no wall between the sacred and the worldly. To fight was to serve God. To rule was to fulfill His will. To build cities, to write laws, to translate knowledge, all were acts of faith. What began as a small movement in the desert became one of the most influential forces in human history. And while swords may have won battles, it was ideas about unity, justice, and destiny that won the hearts of millions. Today, more than 14 centuries later, we still ask, was it faith or power? But maybe the question itself is wrong. Perhaps it was the union of both that shaped the world we live in. So I ask you, if you lived in that time, when tribes became nations, when belief became empire, would you have ridden out with the armies of Islam, believing you carried the light of revelation? Or would you have stayed behind, questioning whether the sword can ever truly serve the spirit? Tell me what you think. Was it faith, power, or something in between?